What's up, Pod Pals? It's your buddy Adam, and you are checking out Podcast Launch Tips. This is the show where I teach those that have been podcrastinating how to effectively and correctly launch their podcast, whether it's your first podcast, or maybe you need to rebrand your current show or start a totally different show. I've got your back with Podcast Launch Tips. Today, we are talking about the 4 different styles or different types of podcast episodes and who should be using them, even more importantly. So this topic isn't talked about enough, in my opinion, in the podcasting space. A lot of people just assume, a podcast means I interview people, and that's that. And then the sponsors come rolling in and I make millions of dollars on underwear ads. Not so fast, my friend. It normally doesn't happen that way. So we need to dive into these 4 different styles or different types of shows. So obviously, the most common in the space is the interview. You have an expert on your show, you interview them, you produce great content together. Hopefully, they share it out. That's what we hope and pray once the episode goes live. But here's the issue. Like, anybody can do interviews, all right? I wholeheartedly endorse the interview style of podcasting. But if you have programs, products, and services, if you are trying to use a show to grow your brand, if you're trying to sell anything, if you're trying to be an expert in a space, you need to do more than just interviews. Because if you only do interviews, you will be seen as the person that interviews experts and not the expert. Let me say that again. If you only do interviews with other people on your podcast, you'll be viewed as the person that interviews experts and not the expert. All right, Pod Pals, let that sink in. So we need to look at these other 3 styles of episodes that you can take advantage of to grow your brand and to create a breadcrumb trail with your audience that leads to monetization. So the second type of episode is a solo episode, what I'm doing right here, right now. And some people are nervous about this, like, what am I going to talk about? I'm used to having this banter back and forth. So with the solo episode, just take most of these episodes that I'm doing here, like, they're shorter usually, they're to the point. You don't have to talk about everything. Like, when I do an episode like this, it's one tip. So one focus point. It's not everything about podcast launch. It's just me dropping a 10-minute or so tip on one aspect of the podcast launch journey. You can do the exact same thing for your show. And these are nice, because of expert positioning. So I'm not interviewing anybody. I'm the expert in this interview. Yes, score. I did it again. But like, when I'm teaching, I am the teacher. I'm the expert. I'm dropping my knowledge and you're absorbing it. So that positioning is different than if I'm interviewing somebody else and they're dropping knowledge. All right. So hopefully that's starting to make sense. These are great for if you do your own editing and production. So much easier when you're doing solo episodes. All right. I may convert you into only doing solo episodes. It's so much better and easier on the production side. You don't have to do all these images of your guests and all this stuff. You still want to produce social media assets, which I do, but the overall production, like, if you are a seasoned podcaster like myself, I know I'm not going to have to do a whole lot of audio editing. My dog's not going to come running in barking, all that stuff. It just flows easier. And scheduling wise, I had some extra time today. Honestly, I wasn't planning on doing this episode today. Had a little break in the action. All right, let's record some solo episodes. Cool. These are great for kind of a break the glass in case of emergency. If you mainly do interviews, that's cool. But another issue with interview style podcast is we got to chase those people down. And if our little interview pipeline runs dry a little bit, we can be scrambling to, like, you don't want to be that person that's calling me up going, dude, I need to interview somebody. I got to put out a show tonight or tomorrow. That's not going to be great content. So don't be that person. So maybe you sit down, you record a few, put these in the bank, these solo episodes, and these are kind of the break the glass in case of emergency. You've got a bank of these ready to go. And, if you're on vacation, if you get sick, if you run out of people to interview, you can splice these in a little bit. But again, expert positioning, these work really, really well. All right. Now, if you are a coach, if you sell courses, if you sell consulting, if you want to speak on stages, these next 2 styles of episodes, these are 2 that you really need to seriously consider. All right. The third style of podcast episode we're going to talk about today is what I call a coaching style or an audit style episode. So with my brand podcasting business school, every Friday I put out a new one-on-one interview with one of my listeners that's done as a coaching session. So it's not really an interview because they're asking me some questions and I coach them up. But this is a coaching style episode. I release these every single Friday because this builds expert positioning, but it really is next level expert positioning, where on a solo episode like this, I'm teaching. But when you get to be a fly on the wall and listen to me actively teaching and actively like in coach mode, it's a whole different level. All right. It's a whole different level, expert positioning wise. Now, another bonus of this style of an episode is that as you do more and more of these, a certain percentage of those people that are sitting in that guest chair are going to hire you to be their coach. So that's great for monetization. But even better is this is really a one-to-many coaching tryout session is how you could view it, because your listeners are listening every time you release this episode. You are in dozens, hundreds, maybe thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of earbuds, and you are positioned well as a coach so that when that person is ready to invest in coaching, you're very top of mind. And there, I've had people that will show up for a podcast audit. They've heard me do dozens of these. They already know kind of what I'm going to tell them probably, but they just want to do it. And a lot of those people are coming in going, hey, just so you know, I'm going to hire you as a coach before we even get started. There's zero sales conversation, which is how I like to do it, honestly. So that's the third style of podcast episode that we can put out there, is the coaching or audit style episode. And again, to be very clear, I prefer to have people that are not my clients doing that with me. So it's people that are in my listenership. We invite them onto the show. We produce content together. All right. I always get questions about that. And these are free. You do not charge people for these. That's another mistake. I had a guy that was like, no one is signing up. Should I lower the price? I'm like, pump your brakes. You're charging? No, we're not. These are free. He's like, mind blown. And then he started making money because he was doing them for free, and sales happen on the back end. Fourth type of podcast episode I want to talk about today is what I call a community style podcast. You can do these on Zoom like I do with my Pod Pal Zoom parties. I just consulted with a person that's doing these on Clubhouse and recording the audio. Same thing. The idea is having like a panel or a community gathering where there's a little bit of a format. There's some topical discussion, but you're all creating content together. There's a big value add for being on your show. They want to be there, and you release this as content. Again, I would love for you to have a little solo time in there so that you are positioning yourself as an expert. Then you lead a discussion on the topic that you just chose, and then some sort of value add. So when I do my bi-weekly Pod Pal Zoom party, I invite anybody that listens to my show, whether they're clients, whether they're not clients, whoever, they can come on. We'll have anywhere between 12 and 25 podcasters on there. I'll teach for about 10 to 15 minutes. Then we'll have an open discussion on whatever it is, open Q&A on whatever the topic of the session that I taught on was. And then we do something called podcaster speed dating. And this is like the carrot that I dangle out there. You have to have that irresistible reason why people want to attend, because the price of admission, it's free, but they're going to give you their email address. That's the true price of admission. They're opting into your list. All right. So we have to have something there that's a little bit more than just the teaching, because they can listen to the podcast and get that. So what I do is what I call podcaster speed dating, where everybody gets 90 seconds to say what their show is, who they're looking for as a guest, who they're a great guest for, and how to get in touch with them, so that all the people in the room, they start networking. People are booking each other on each other's shows, all sorts of great collaborations happening. But this gets recorded, remember, and released as an episode. So everybody that listens to my show is hearing all that as well. Now, if somebody's not looking for guests, they can just fast forward that when they listen to the episode. But if they are looking for guests and you fit them in their show, they're going to reach out. I have people that reach out and thank me every single week. They're like, hey, I got booked on a couple of shows. That episode just went live that I was on with Pod Pals. Thank you so much. Like, it really works, and it's free. So what does that look like for your brand, for your show? And for some of you, if you're really having a hard time figuring this out, lead a discussion, bring your people on there, teach on a topic. You can never go wrong with bringing a special guest on to teach as well. That could be the thing. Like, look back at your most downloaded episodes and go, all right, which one's got the most play? Which one's got the most reach? If that was a guest, bring them in for your next Zoom party or clubhouse room or whatever, your community style episode. Let people know, hey, come and ask direct questions. We're only letting 10 people in. This is free. We're going to create content together. It's going to be an episode. You'll get people to show up. All right. So those are the 4 types. We've got the interview, we've got the solo, we've got the coaching or audit style, and then we've got the community style episode. Look at each of the 4 and think about what fits your brand. Like for me, I do all of them. I do all of the above, and I incorporate that into my podcasting business school content Death Star. I splice those different types of episodes in there. They all work for me. Maybe a couple work for you. Think about also what will be easier. Like what would make your production and content schedule better and easier, and maybe even more lucrative. ELF, easy, lucrative, fun. That's what we're looking for. ELF. All right, that's the mantra of this episode. We want ELF, easy, lucrative, fun. Okay, that is it for this episode. If you are thinking about launching a show, I'd love to have you attend my next podcast launch think tank. It is free. We just gather up some people that are a little bit pod curious. They've been podcrastinating, and I get all their questions answered. So if that sounds good to you, go to the website, podcastingbusiness.school, get signed up, and let's go. And with that, I'm going to tag out and leave you and send you out into the world wishing you health, happiness, and many downloads. We will see you next time.